welcomed by members of Hamilton's very large Ukrainian community, the Defense Minister and Hamilton East Stony Creek MP Chad Collins came to listen and talk about Canada's vast and ongoing contributions in support of Ukraine's war effort.
How can I help?
We've got lots of donations.
The parliamentarians then getting a tour of some of the donations for newly arrived refugees, led by Elena Lazar, the president of the Hamilton branch of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress.
It's incredible. I'm so impressed.
Afterwards, under the spectacular beauty of the recently renovated church, the minister met with CHCH News for a comprehensive interview. I would love to start with the budget. Just before it was released, Chrystia Freeland said that, this needs to be a budget of restraint. However, when it came out, there was a lot of spending in it. So I'm wondering why the decision to spend so much money.
It's targeted spending, addressing affordability issues, addressing dental care for families with incomes under $90,000, as well as fueling the green, clean economy. Those are targeted areas of spending to ensure that we are helping the most vulnerable Canadians, as well as driving towards a green economy. And of course, making sure we have investment coming to our shores, as we've seen with Volkswagen, for example, coming to St. Thomas, as we've seen with electrical vehicle manufacturing at the Ford plant that is going to be coming up. This is a very important means to ensure investment comes to our shores. In terms of our overall economic picture, Canada does have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We need to maintain our fiscal prudence while doing this targeted investment to combat inflation.
But is it being fiscally prudent to spend all this money given the economic uncertainty and the inflation crisis that we're facing?
This spending is limited to certain specific areas. Affordability, in particular, the grocery rebate is a good example. Making sure that we have dental care, not just for children under 12, but for families who have incomes of less than $90,000, and making sure as well that we are addressing some unnecessary fees, such as fees that affect small businesses vis-a-vis credit cards, such as junk fees. We need to make sure that we're addressing some of the areas that hit Canadians hard in their pocketbooks.
What would you say to economists who say that deficits can drive inflation, the deficit going up to $40 billion in this budget?
As I said, this is a limited spending budget. There are targeted areas where spending is occurring with specific objectives in mind. So, for example, driving an economy that is focused on green, clean investments, making sure that we are helping Canadians in healthcare and in particular in dental care, making sure we're addressing Canadians during times when groceries are high. These are the types of initiatives that we're focused on in the budget, but in a limited way so that our spending does not drive inflation.
Nobody's going to say no to the grocery rebate. Any dollar is good, but it is still a very small amount. Do you think it'll be a significant help for Canadians given the high cost of food?
When I'm at the dog park or at the hockey arena, I hear from Canadians and people in my riding that we need to do whatever we can to support them during this time. And that's one way. But there are others, for example, in terms of cutting those fees, excess fees. That's another way that affects small businesses, because we know that small businesses are usually family-run businesses, and we need to make sure that we understand families need to be supported as well during this time. Students are also a focus for us in this budget, making sure we're addressing their needs in terms of the potential debt that they may take on. We've got to be across the board focused on vulnerable Canadians, and that's what we're doing.
I'd like to switch to the Biden visit, if you don't mind. The immigration deal, the asylum seeker deal between the Prime Minister and President Biden, we're hearing from the mayor of Niagara Falls and other municipalities that they're concerned about refugees taking up places within hotels because those hotels are typically used by tourists. Do you think this deal is going to help move people waiting to move through the immigration system? Do you think it's going to get them through faster? So hopefully places like Niagara Falls don't have refugees living in hotels with no real plan about what comes next.
We needed to make sure that the Safe Third Country Agreement applies to the entire border, the longest undefended border in the world. And so it was a very positive development that the United States and Canada, after that Biden visit, were able to reach this agreement. And of course, that's going to allow for more controlled immigration across the border, and that is what is happening now. There will continue to be kinks that need to be ironed out, but it is very positive now that we are going to see more substantiated, more systematic methods of bringing people into the country, and we will be accepting more and more migrants as a result.
U.S. presidents historically have pushed Canadian prime ministers on defense spending. I'm wondering, did Biden request us spend more money on defense? And can you tell me about some of the defense spending that is coming up?
The discussion surrounding defense was very positive. And in particular, we focused on the almost $40 billion that Canada is putting on the table to modernize NORAD and continental defense. And in particular, that's going to include $7.3 billion to upgrade investments for bases across the country, including in the north, and at Cold Lake and Bagotville, where the F-35s, 88 of them, will be housed when those fighter jets come off the line. And in terms of defense spending more broadly, we did commit $8 billion in budget 2022 to go towards defense spending on top of a 70% increase in defense spending beginning in 2017 over a 9-year period. So the trajectory is upward, and we are continuing to build on that, and that was the tenor of the conversation with President Biden last week.
Did the president re-up his ask that Canada lead a peacekeeping mission to Haiti?
We continue to commit to Haitian-led solutions and doing what we can together for Haiti. As we know, the Haitian National Police need support, and we committed about $100 million towards supporting them with some equipment as well as additional pieces of equipment and training.
Is there any situation where Canadian peacekeepers are going to end up in Haiti?
We are, again, very focused on a Haitian-led solution, making sure we are there as needed. So, for example, we already have had 2 ships in and around the Port-au-Prince harbor and the waters around Haiti. We had a CP-140 Aurora conduct some surveillance over Haiti. So it's the type of assistance that we are providing, which of course goes towards supporting Haiti in its time of need, but with targeted support.
Would it be difficult to launch a peacekeeping mission considering that the government is not a democratically elected one in Haiti, so that ask potentially for a peacekeeping force isn't necessarily representative of what the population wants?
We want to make sure that the solution is Haitian-led, that it is helpful, and that we are acting in a multinational fashion. And our ambassador, Bob Ray, for example, has been to Haiti twice to ensure that the Canadian contributions there are meaningful and are useful and will able to be sustained in the short and long term.
Just moving on to Ukraine, last topic. More than 400 days of war. Did you really think it would last this long? And what are your thoughts on how long this war is going to last?
Well, it has lasted this long because of the resilience of the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian citizens, who are incredibly inspiring during this time with an illegal and unjustifiable invasion. For Canada's part, we've put on the table over $1 billion of military aid, including heavy artillery, ammunition, armored vehicles, an air defense system. This is the type of aid that we will continue to utilize to support Ukraine. And of course, in the budget itself, we had over $2 billion in aid through the IMF. So again, this is important for Canada. We are with Ukraine in the short and the long term, and I will be continuing to meet with my defense counterparts across NATO and beyond to collaborate and work together. As we did with the Leopard 2A4 tanks, Canada is sending 8 such tanks over, as well as trainers, as well as spare parts, as well as a recovery vehicle, you can see how important Ukraine's efforts are to Canada. We have many, many Canadians of Ukrainian descent, and we need to do whatever we can to support Ukraine, not only because of the urgency of the situation, of the threat to democracy, but also because the rules-based international order has kept us safe for decades since the end of the Second World War, and we all depend on it for our own peace and stability.
And given the donations, can Canada afford to continue to being such a good partner with Ukraine? I mean, it's a lot of money. Can we continue to do that if this war drags into another year?
Well, Canada is helping in many ways. As I said, over $1 billion in military aid, over $5 billion in humanitarian, economic, and military aid combined. We are also transporting aid on behalf of our allies. We've transported over 7 million pounds of military aid and equipment on behalf of our allies from our hub in Prestwick, Scotland, and of course in the area of training. We've trained over 35,000 Ukrainian soldiers. We have trainers in England training Ukrainian new recruits. We have engineers in Poland training Ukrainian sappers. We have as well medics in Poland training Ukrainians as well. And I mentioned the Leopard 2A4 battle tanks where we have trainers there. So training is a very important piece of expertise that Canada brings to the table, universally recognized for this expertise, and will continuing to operate on multiple fronts for the benefit of the Ukrainian Armed Forces.
You bring up the tanks. 8 seems to me like a large number considering I believe it's 80 to 100 we have total. Is there a plan to replace those tanks and all the other equipment that we've sent to Ukraine?
Of course, we need to continue to replace equipment and artillery that we are sending to Ukraine. The focus of the defense policy update that we're engaged in right now is on recapitalizing the Canadian Armed Forces in light of the changing global threat environment, whether it's in the area of cybersecurity or capabilities. We are in an area of growth for the Canadian Armed Forces. We're rebuilding, reconstituting, as well as recapitalizing.